What's going on, everybody? Coming at you guys with another informational video on pier fishing, and today's going to be a little bit different than the previous videos that I've made on how to pier fish and how to target these fish. Today I'm not going to bust out all the rods and reels, lines and stuff. I'm going to kind of just talk about stuff today. If you want to know the rods and reels and everything that I suggest or that I use, I have a link of one of my other videos up here, and everything that I talk about today, I'll have links to everything in the description below, so go check that out there. But today, guys, I want to talk about how to catch fish in the middle of summer. I should have done this video about a week ago to be right in the middle of August, but we still have about a month until, maybe even longer in Florida, until things start cooling off and that fall transition starts happening and you start catching more fall time fish and the bait starts pushing in. So today I want to focus on how can you go out there and get the most bang for your buck, essentially being able to go out there and not waste your time and actually catch fish. And with that said, I'm going to make it very simple for you guys, and we're going to target 3 different times to fish and also only a few different fish species. So this isn't going to be how to target every fish that you can potentially catch in the summer. This is how to go out there and just catch fish, because there's going to be certain fish species that you can target all throughout the summer, and they're actually pretty easy to catch. Alright guys, so the first thing I want to talk about are the 3 different times to fish, and those are going to be early morning, late afternoon, and prefrontal. Might sound pretty simple, but I'm going to get more in depth of what this actually means. So we'll start out with morning time. I'm not talking rolling out to the pier at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm not talking about 7 o'clock before it starts getting hot. I mean early. You guys need to be there when it's still dark outside. And before I forget, I also want to talk about where to fish on the pier. So that early morning, what you want to target is going to be obviously either the end of the pier or super shallow is what I personally have noticed gets the best results. So with that being said, it also depends on what kind of fish you're going to be targeting. If there's no front or anything like that, what I would say is, if you want to go out there and just catch fish, focus on that super shallow water before the sun comes up. I'm talking like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Yes, it sucks. I'd say maybe 5 to 5:30 probably. But yes, it sucks getting up that early and being out there, but if you want to catch fish, this is going to be your best bet. And what you're really going to be targeting down here is redfish. Super early in the morning, those fish are going to be pushed out. They're not going to be hugging underneath the pier or anything like that. They're going to be out feeding around the pier. You'll see them swimming up on the sandbar, in between the 2 bars, and you can typically fool the fish a little bit easier. It's dark, they're out there feeding, and I recommend throwing a jig head and some sort of fluke on the back of it with some Pro Cure or something like that on it. Also, if you can get out there with live bait, sometimes it's harder that early in the morning to have live bait, but that's a good option. Always is a good option, as well as even dead bait, like a dead LY or something on a mono or fluorocarbon leader. That works really well. And then if we're talking prefrontal, there's a lot of wind, something like that. You guys have tropical storms heading your way right now, so this is something you need to think about. I would definitely not worry about that, because you have a lot better, to me, redfish, you can go out there. They're one of my favorite fish to catch, but you can go out there and catch them almost 365 days out of the year. But if you got these prefrontals, you're gonna have a lot better opportunities of catching some pelagic fish such king mackerel, something like that, maybe a mahi-mahi, something along those lines. So if there is a lot of wind coming out of the south, I'd be at the end of the pier early in the morning throwing a bait. That's probably going to be your best bet. All right, so let's talk now. Late afternoon, same thing. You want to be fishing right when the sun's going down. Typically the bite might pick up a little bit before that, but as soon as the sun's going down, it's getting dark. And this is kind of where I'd focus more on the end of the pier. If the wind's right. If not, you can do the same thing that I talked about in the morning time, late at night. Well, not late at night, but when it's dark. Fishing shallow. And the thing with fishing shallow when it's dark is you can still see those fish. You can see outlines. The water's super shallow, so you don't need sunglasses. So you take those off and you can see shadows moving. Typically, if you have a little bit of moonlight, something like that, you'll be able to see those fish even when it's pitch black outside. So don't let that push you away from fishing those times. And just know that's gonna be your best time to get bait. All right, and then prefrontal. This goes for almost any type of fishing, but this is one time where I would say do not fish shallow. You want to be on the end of the pier. You're fishing for those king mackerel, things like that. And prefrontal, I don't mean the day before or a couple hours before. Yes, that can be productive, but I'm talking like right when that front hits. Usually in the summertime, there's all sorts of little storms pushing through. And if you're out there and you see that storm pushing in from offshore, it might have been dead all day, but if you're there, you're fishing, go to the end. When that wind picks up, it's almost guaranteed that there's gonna be some fish moving right before that rain hits, or as it's raining, as soon as it goes off. I've been on the pier too many times and walked down because it started storming, and a couple people catch fish on the end of the pier. So just keep those things in mind when you are out there in the summer. All right, guys, now that we kind of covered the 3 times that I think are the most productive fishing out on the pier during the dog days of summer, the worst time of the year. Essentially, it's usually the slowest time of the year and you're out there and there's nothing going on. But these are the ways you can catch fish. So let's talk about those fish to target. Main thing is gonna be your redfish. They're gonna be there, you can catch them. And you can usually be pretty successful even in the middle of the summer if you follow those tips that I gave you guys. And so let me go ahead and give you all a couple ways to get more bites. So I talked about fishing with the fluke. That's typically going to be either when those fish are, where it's super early in the morning, or another time that works really well is if you have schools of ladyfish coming down the beach and those redfish get fired up and people start hooking them. Have that jig there just waiting till they start getting fired up and thrown into the school. That's a really simple way to catch them. Another way, once the sun starts coming up and those fish start creeping up underneath the pier, getting in that shadow, is a live bait. And it can be as simple, sometimes you might be fishing with an 80-pound mono leader and they're not wanting to bite, drop down to a 60-pound mono leader. I've had that work for me. They won't want to bite it, and then I lower my leader, get a lively bait, throw down there. And you guys would be surprised at the size bait a smaller redfish can eat. Those big hardtails are hanging out. Throw that down there. Those things kick and they get them fired up real quick. Obviously it gets harder the more they push underneath the pier. First of all, it's getting hotter outside, and then second of all, you hook them and they're gonna shoot that pier and probably wrap you right away unless you got some ass behind you and you're locking down the drag and you're trying to pull those fish out as hard as you can. It's very fun catching fish like that, but you can lose a lot of gear doing that. Also, you can bump down with start using fluorocarbon. Me personally, I've bumped down to 40-pound mono before and haven't had any issues. It's just depending on how far they're underneath the pier and how much drag you can put on them. But those are some good ways to catch redfish. Live bait, obviously, that's something you want to use, and hooking that bait in the throat. It's gonna make that bait swim down and you put a little bit of pressure and it's going to cause that bait to swim down, and you can really get it right in the middle of that school and get those fish fired up. Alright, so the next fish we'll talk about is, we'll talk about tarpon too, because you can almost target them the same way as redfish. Obviously they're not going to push up underneath the pier and do that sort of thing, but early in the morning, shallow water, I have not caught a tarpon in August, but I've hooked tarpon in August. Super early morning, throwing swim baits at them. Shallow water. I don't know what it is. It seems like early in the morning they just like to push up. I don't know if they're just looking for food, but that's typically a good way. I would just have that rod with me. I wouldn't stand there and just look for them, especially that late into the year. Unless you're having a bunch of push fish, then definitely focus on that. But just have that there just in case. And then also king mackerel. Those are going to be the three main bigger fish species. Obviously you catch ladyfish and typically bluefish and stuff like that in the summertime, but if you're trying to catch those big fish and catch a bunch of them, those are the main fish you're going to focus on. So king mackerel, simple, you want to focus on them when there's wind and those prefrontal conditions into the front conditions, and fish for them like you would any other time. You know, you throw X-wraps, you can throw crippled herrings, live baits, dead baits with leaders, things like that. So guys, those are just a few tips for catching fish on the pier in the middle of summer, whenever it seems like it's not even worth going out there. It's miserably hot, so you can kind of stay comfortable and catch fish and not waste too much time out there. There's been too many days of me even going out there and just standing all day and just nothing, you know. But if you follow those tips, I promise you guys, you'll catch fish this time of year. So remember, everything is going to be linked down in the description below. If you want any of that gear, I'll list, you know, the hooks that I like using, the leaders I like using. I'll link the jig molds. I'll link a bunch of stuff for you guys if you want to go check it out. And remember, that helps the channel as well. If you guys like the video, if this helps you out, or maybe you guys have some other ways of catching fish in the middle of the summer, go ahead, leave a comment below, and please give the video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, y'all.